Hello everyone, Logan Bryce here, the 20-sided DM, and I have a question for you. Do you like broken schedules, arguing about rules, and hurt feelings? If so, then do not, under any circumstances, watch this video. This video is going to focus on how to Session Zero. A lot of other videos online talk about Session Zero, but we're going to focus on getting in-depth into each detail.
You think this is a game? No, I think Jenga's a game.
Most of the advice in this video is going to come from the perspective of the DM, since that's what I do most of the time. Session Zero is about building a foundation to grow your game on. That may sound ominous, but really what I'm trying to say is you need to talk to your players now, so you can talk to them less later.
You know, you don't talk very much. I like you.
What is Session Zero? Session Zero is a term used to describe a number of different interactions when starting a new campaign. Very often an actual gathering of players and DM where the players make new characters and everyone discusses the upcoming game. The end goal of Session Zero is to make sure that all players and DM are on the same page and have a level of mutual respect for each other.
And you will respect my authority!
The first thing I like to do is talk about theme and mood. I actually pass out a little questionnaire that asks players what they're looking for in the game. Whether they're looking for high RPG, lots of combat, mystery, puzzles, political intrigue. And this isn't only for me, but also so all the other players can understand what each player is looking for. That way everyone's on the same page and understands that just because there's something they don't like in a game, doesn't mean that somebody at the table isn't enjoying it.
Your latest performance was as delectable as dipping my bottom over and over into a bath of the silkiest oils and creams.
It's important to be flexible as both a player and a DM, as one person may be interested in doing something that the rest aren't. If the DM wants to run a low magic, Lord of the Rings style campaign, and the rest of the players want to play a steampunk high adventure campaign, there could be a serious conflict.
8, 9, 10, and turn!
Once you and your players have come up with the theme and mood of the campaign, you can move on to house rules. It is important to talk about house rules early so your players aren't blindsided and become resentful thinking that you're just trying to turn things to your advantage. As a DM, I try to limit things as little as possible and give players as many options as possible. But there are the occasional campaign where I will try to limit the races or classes that somebody can play as it better fits the narrative of the game. However, if a player comes to me and really wants to play something different, I really have to think about that, and in the end, usually I'll try to find a way to make it work.
Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something.
Usually about this time, the players start talking about creating a balanced party, where they have a fighter, a rogue, a wizard, and a cleric. I really like to dissuade them from doing this. I don't think it's necessary, especially with the rules in 5th edition, and as a good DM, anyone should be able to adjust things to make it challenging, but not impossible, for any party composition.
Are you asking for a challenge?
So as a DM, it's okay to set some restrictions for your players, but remember they're here to have fun and play in a fantasy setting. And players, remember that while your DM may be setting some restrictions, they're trying to create a consistent world that is the same from start to finish. In the end, you've come to an agreement with what house rules will be used, and you can move on with character creation. While your players are cracking their books to start their characters, it would be a good time to talk about scheduling. Like many things in life, the best type of schedule is a regular one, where you meet at the same time, the same day of the week, and the same location every session. That's really hard to accomplish, however, when you're dealing with adults who have lives outside of gaming. I'm not sure what that is, though. As a player, make sure you respect the game's time. Show up early, stay a little late if necessary, and when game starts, be ready to play.
'Cause I'm ready! I'm ready!
Character backgrounds, and do they know each other? The answer in my campaigns is almost always yes. Why? It just makes things easier. What I do is I have the players roll a die equal to the number of players there are. So if there are 6 players, they each roll a d6. Any numbers that match, those players know each other. Any numbers that don't match anyone, those players know each other. It usually gets 2 or 3 groups that know each other or don't. And if there's an outlier, then I can just plug them in somewhere. What this allows is the players to build their character backgrounds with these relationships in mind, and makes things a lot smoother once the game starts. The next thing I talk to my players about are plot devices. I like to bring these up at this point because the suspension of disbelief is very fickle. If something happens during the game that is jarring or outside of what the characters expect, it can really pull the players out of their immersion. So if I'm going to use a plot device like a MacGuffin to help drive the plot forward, I let my players know in advance so they can be ready for it. That expectation will help them stay in character. Here's one I probably disagree with a lot of DMs on: electronics at the table. I actually have no problems with electronics at the table, as long as players are responsible and respectful.
You serious?
Most DMs I've spoken to don't allow electronics at their table, or at least they'd like to not allow electronics at their table. I'm sort of the opposite view. I like electronics and other distractions at my table for players when they're not in the scene. This keeps them from making out-of-character comments and kibitzing while I'm trying to move the plot forward. For myself, on those rare occasions when I get to play instead of DM, I find it difficult not to make comments and jokes during other players' scenes. The reason for this is I don't ever get to make the comments and jokes when I'm DMing because I'm too busy DMing. So it becomes very difficult for me. So picking up my phone and playing a little game while they're doing their scene doesn't stop me from being able to pay attention, but it does help prevent me from interrupting and slowing things down. So as long as my players use these distractions respectfully, they'll have a place at my table. The last section is the most important and the most serious. This is where you have the opportunity to show your players the level of respect that you have for them and show them the expectations of respect you have for your table. This section is perfectly coined by a friend of mine, Alex, from Titan Bear Gaming as the no-fly zone. It's also been called the out-of-bounds section, or in some games it's called lines and veils. There may be topics that you or your players don't want brought up during game, or at least don't want brought up very often. These usually stem from a mental or emotional concern that you or your players may have. They are completely valid, and they need to be respected. Now is the time to bring them up. Players should also be made aware and feel very free to tell the DM in secret these types of lines and veils. These topics will vary from group to group, and some may have none, and others may have many. They can range from the mundane romantic relationship to the idea of animal abuse. The difference between a line and a veil is a topic that you don't mind hearing about, but you don't want details about. It is obscured by a veil. The big bad enslaved some people, or he murdered some people, or he tortured some people. It's okay to hear about it to understand how evil the big bad is, but you don't want to hear the details. You don't want it to be happening in front of your character. A line is a hard stop. It is something you don't want to hear about at all. It could be a relationship abuse. It could be sexual assault. But it is something that you and the players and the DM should avoid. Because that's what respect is listening and agreeing to keep this game fun for everyone. Fails in my game range from animal abuse to sexual assault and can include some forms of torture. I don't have any serious lines in my game unless my players do. The important thing to remember with the no-fly zone is that mistakes will be made. Somebody's going to accidentally lift the veil or step over that line. And as long as they are apologetic, they need to be forgiven. And you need to understand that they're trying. It may not be something that they realize they do in the heat of the moment. I myself have crossed my own veils within my games, and I accidentally introduced a small amount of animal abuse, which broke my heart after I realized what I had done. And I was very upset with myself. It can and probably will happen, but the idea is that then it can be identified, and you have this agreement in advance that everyone can go back to and say, hey, we said that this is the way we were going to do things. And that person can then apologize, and everyone can move on, hopefully healthy and happy. So I know that I have said a lot of this throughout this entire discussion, but I want to reiterate. Session 0 is the foundation you build your game upon. It is the most important thing, whether you do it in chunks, whether you do it all at once, or whether you do it online or in person. It is that important. make sure that you have these discussions with your players. Make sure that you have this discussion with your DM. You will thank yourself later on.
Isn't it great? It's my birthday gift to me.
Okay, on to questions and answers, or at least one question and one answer. Today's question comes from, excuse me while I read this, Nikki, Sarah, Theron, Lauren, and Libby from the Roll Like a Girl podcast, which you should go listen to, and we'll be putting a link down in the doobly-doo. Their question is, what kind of RPG do you prefer? Combat heavy, roleplay heavy, or a mixture in between? That is an excellent question, Nara Nabi. For me, personally, I like a mixture of both. RPG elements are very important. If I had to choose one only, and I can never do the other one again, I would go RPG. There's a lot more options there. There's a lot more I can do. That is my wheelhouse. I enjoy role-playing. Combat, however, has a really important place in the narration of a game, especially in a game like Dungeons & Dragons, as opposed to maybe White Wolf or one of these other more RPG-heavy games. So I tend to stick somewhere more in the middle. My goal as a DM is to do whatever my players want. I want that mixture that makes everyone happy. So I kind of strive for that. I push towards, finding out what they want, as we talked about earlier in this video, and making a mixture of that. For games where I'm a player, I lean much heavier on the roleplay side, but I seem to tend to make characters that are very good at the combat side. Maybe in me, there's something thinking, well, if I'm really good at combat, I can get to the roleplay faster. So that's kind of how my characters seem to come out. I hope that answered your question. To thank you guys, we're going to be sending you each one of these somewhat neato custom 20-sided DM dice, which will be sent out by my lovely wife and your D&D mom, Tessa. Now we've come to the reason that the 7 of you are here, to win this beautiful Xanathar's Guide to Everything limited edition copy, which we will be giving away once we hit 50 subscribers to someone who comments on this video. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, join us on Twitter at 20sided DM, and join us for our next video, which will be talking about DM styles and how I tell my stories. Lastly, due to a late-night shopping spree on chessex.com, we still have a lot more of those custom D6s to give out, so please leave more questions so we can pick one and answer next week. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. It's alright, I didn't catch it. Or if it did, who the hell cares? I like that line. Our electronics and table rules. I mean, would you rather talk about something else less controversial, like politics or religion? Nirarinabi. Can't do that.
Sorry. I'm sorry I laughed at your joke.